Welcome into another edition of Spits and Suds. Happy holidays. I'm Gavin Spittle. It's awesome to speak with senior staff writer for DallasStars.com, also the co-host of the podcast Podman Rush. New episode out now with Daryl Razor Ray and the future inductee, I'm going to say it now, in the Dallas Stars Hall of Fame. He is the greatness of Mike Heika. How are you today, sir?
I'm good. I thought you were talking about Daryl Ray.
No, well, he'll be in there too. He'll be in there too. Yep. Got a bunch to get in. We got a lot of years to go.
Catch up.
Yeah, we a lot of catching up. Okay, first off, as a guy who is around these players all the time, how are you avoiding the flu bug?
Most of them do, honestly. It's interesting. I think, it hits different people at different times, and typically it's only a day or two. So I've been fine. I think a lot of people have been fine, but when it gets you, it's hard. And then two, to do what they do and to whatever, have breathing problems or flu or whatever the complications are. Like we watched what Essa did the other night playing 30 minutes, and a lot of people were speculating, well, the next game that it kind of did take some wind out of his sails.
Yeah, absolutely. Does it feel weird being home for an extended amount of time?
Yeah, it feels great, to tell you the truth, because the work that we did to get here, that was hard. Just going over to Finland, being on the road. We went East Coast, we went West Coast. Like the travel's been really difficult. And then I think, if I remember correctly, we came home for like 1 or 2 games.
Yeah.
Like 4 or 5 times. And when you do that, it almost feels like another road trip. Like it's just another stop on the road. You come home, you change your bag out, but it doesn't really feel that like you're home. But this has felt like we've been home.
It seems like the coaches are trying their best to give the guys time off in between these every other day. As much as they'd love to have them on the ice working on the power play and other things, I'm sure rest is the major factor right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. So every coach who's been through here said it's a huge challenge for Dallas because of their schedule. And when you look at Pete, you're like, well, he was in San Jose. That had to be tough, right? That's hard travel. He was in Vegas. He was in Florida. He was in New Jersey. And he said this is the hardest travel. This team, being with this team, is the hardest travel he's had. And it really has forced him to say, okay, we can't practice today because we got to let them get their legs back.
Right.
So it's interesting being where we are. And I guess that, the closest trip, I think, is Denver or Nashville. And that's still like a 2-hour flight. So we don't have, like, San Jose has LA and Anaheim and other things. We don't have a Houston or a San Antonio. That would help a lot.
Yeah, we need to expedite that Houston expansion franchise.
Oklahoma City, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so yesterday in the press conference, and you're around the team all the time. Had you heard prior Coach talk about the 60 goals missing from Seguin and Pavelski? Because that was one of the first times I've heard it, Mike, as far as like in the press conference and say, well, this is part of the reason why we're struggling as far as scoring.
Yeah, he said it a couple of times.
Okay.
And I think the interesting part about it all is how it's supposed to be replaced. One, Robertson, Hintz, Johnston, those guys aren't scoring at the level we're used to them scoring at. But two, they really thought that Stankoven and Bourque and, just whoever, whatever the other younger guys are, would step in and contribute something. And right now they're not. Even Stankoven, who when he came in, I think he got 6 goals in 10 games or something like that. So he can score at the NHL level. It's just a lot harder. And so if you look at, like I call the Rubik's Cube, if you look at the departure of Pavelski and then now the departure of Seguin, it just creates all sorts of issues. So last year, we're rolling out the top 3 lines, pretty much the same every game. Robertson, Hintz, Pavelski, Duchesne, Seguin, and Marchment. And then Ben, Johnston, and then Stankoven late, but they're on off at times. But literally every game, you kind of like. I don't want to say there wasn't any coaching. You rolled them, and then that created a flow, and then that I think a flow creates chemistry, and things just seemed easy. And now this year, we don't even know who's playing with Hintz and Robertson because it might be Wyatt Johnson, it might be Stankoven, it might be Bourque, who's been out there the last couple of games. And then taking Sagan off the Marchment line, now you got to figure out something there. And then if Johnston is a solution for either of those lines, now you're taking them away from Ben. And so it's really been a ripple effect of last year was very easy. This year is very hard. And that doesn't mean they can't do it. It just means it's really hard.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that ripple effect. I'm thinking that led to one of the Toronto goals last night where Lyubushkin and Bichsel both took Auston Matthews, and that left open, a wide open teammate to tie the game.
Right. Yeah, and I think on defense especially, because of the fact you have basically three guys who've been in and out in Dumba, and then now Thomas Harley and Nils Lundqvist. And then even Smith, he's in and out too. So then their pairs are different every game because, again, you get back to, does Heiskanen need to play the left side or the right side? And if he's playing the right side, is that easier sometimes? And who does he play with? Well, typically it's Harley, but you can, use other guys. But basically the same concept. They're just moving pairs every shift almost. And so then it is hard. It is hard to trust that what your teammate's going to do because you weren't out there with them the last shift.
You obviously have covered this team for years upon years, so you would know better than anyone. Is there a comparison as far as a former star with Lian Bichsel? Everyone is talking about Hatcher, and I think that's because of the physicality, obviously.
Correct.
But what I'm so impressed with Bichsel is his skating ability and the ability to start moving pucks for someone that big. And there's always been kind of a philosophy in hockey circles: big men take time. And Correct. That happened with Chara, and Tyler Myers is another one. So I think we're all pretty excited. But is there a comparison that you can think of? I almost wanted to say Alexiak before he went to Seattle. When he was really confident and playing well, there was a time that he was paired with Heiskanen, and I thought that was a really good pairing.
That's the one I would give to you. He's like a meaner version of Jamie Alexiak because Jamie Alexiak was never really mean. He could fight, he could hit, but he didn't like it, I don't think. Bichsel really seems to want to get into these tangles. He likes being the villain. And so, that's obviously got to develop, but he can skate and he is big. And I think the Alexiak comparison is good. It's interesting that you say big men take time because that was him. And again, part of that was coaching.
Yeah.
So they had three young defensemen at the time, and they rotated healthy scratches. And if you made a mistake, you were out. And I think that really does get into your head. If I make a mistake, I'm out.
Right.
And so I don't want to make a mistake. And so then you play to not make mistakes. And I think he had to go to Pittsburgh to get his place, where he was confident enough to come back and play with Miro and just, really be a good overall defenseman. The hope is that Bichsel can be even better than that. But again, I think Jamie Alexiak's a really good defenseman.
Yeah.
And so if he ends up being that's a pretty good get for the Stars.
Even Brendan Dillon went away. And if you looked at Brendan Dillon, for, I don't know, the last 4 or 5 years, you'd really want him on your team. Teams covet a guy like that. So, yeah, it definitely takes time. Okay, the other thing DeBoer said last night that I thought was interesting is guys that have scored in the past, we need more scoring out of them. To me, Mike, I don't know, that seemed like it was not a shot in any way, but it seemed like it needed Jamie Benn to score some goals. Although then when you look, he has, I think, 6 assists in the last 7 games. So he's just not putting it in the net, but contributing in other ways. Do you think it was Ben or some of the others?
I think some of the others.
Okay.
I think it's Robertson is frustrating because, again, and this is a hard thing in the NHL, he's twice scored 40 goals.
Yeah.
And so once you get that the coaches are like, okay, why aren't you scoring 40 goals now, or even 30 or 35? I think Robertson's on pace for 20 right now. And that is way below his average. I think Rope scored goals. They'd like him to contribute more. And then, and this is a really hard thing to put on, again, a 30-goal scorer. But I think Wyatt is right there in the crosshairs of, you were so good in the playoffs and potentially our best forward. So we thought you were going to take the next step, and you kind of have it. And then you get to the discussion of how much was that living with Pavelski, and is that a big challenge for him? Other teams now have his name on the board, which has to make things more difficult. But they have a group of 3 or 4 guys who are all below their, what their normal levels are. If you want to go with goals per game or points per game, I mean, these guys were, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9 points per game last year, and they're 0.4, 0.5, 0.6 right now. And that's a big drop, especially if you get 4 or 5 of them together.
So do you feel at this point, if a trade is to be made, that it should be more focused on the offensive end?
That's a really good question, because the other problem is what is Bichsel? And if he's there, what do you do with Dumba? How do you sort all this out? What about Nils Lundqvist? I think you look and say, okay, we got, let's say 4. Let's say it is Heiskanen, Lindell, Harley, and Lyubushkin.
Right.
And now, who else do you fill in? Who's earned that time? Who do you think is going to get better? And is Bichsel the guy who's going to get better? Could Dumba come back? A lot of people are worried about that. Is he healthy? Could he play even if he's not healthy? Is Lundqvist that guy? Or if you're going to trade for a defenseman, do you include a guy like Lundqvist in that deal? And then, you need right-handed defensemen, so then you don't want to trade him away. But, I mean, there's 100 things where the mind can go.
Yeah.
And then you come back to, all right, if indeed you're going to wait and Tyler's not going to play this year, until, the playoffs start, if he plays, then you don't get all that cap space. If he doesn't play, you get a pretty big chunk of cap space, and you could make a move. And if you make a move, it makes sense to go get a goal scorer. Now, the problem would be he'd be standing in the way of a Mavrik Bourque or a Logan Stankoven or whoever it may be. But that's, if you really believe now's the time, all you have to do is look at what Vegas did when they got Eichel, and it basically changed their franchise.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you have that opportunity,
yeah,
and now's the time, I think a forward would be, the guy I would target.
I think the key word is you want a finisher, but they're few and far between.
And
like last night.
Yeah,
exactly. There were opportunities for the Stars, and it's like not a fault of them, but like on the Heiskanen breakaway, terrific save by Wall.
Oh yeah.
But there was that split second where Heiskanen, curled it just a little bit, and maybe we're nitpicking, but maybe another person one times that and it gets above. I don't. It's tough to say. They're the pros on the ice, but
Correct.
There were just some guys. Brett Hull probably was one of them, where it was like puck just knew to go in the net when it came off his stick.
Yeah, Robertson was that guy for basically the last 2.5 years. So why is he not that guy now? Have they caught up to him? Is he shooting different? Like, it was funny because you would look at goalies when Robertson's shot would go past him. You're like, how did that go past me?
Yeah.
And it happened so many times that he had a knack for either his quick release or how the puck spun off his stick or where he put it, like almost like a pitcher, controlling his picking on the edges of the plate. He could do that, and he's not doing it right now. And again, Wyatt, same thing. Here's a guy who would come in on the backhand, flip it over to the forehand, and then still find a way to get it in under the bar. And he's not doing that right now. So, you seem to have players like that, but you need to get them going.
That's interesting you say that, because I did a deep dive on Brock Nelson when his name came up, and I watched every goal from last year. And so many of those goals, Mike, I'm like, how did the goalie not stop that? Like, I mean, it's a good shot, but it comes off his stick, and somehow, year after year after year, he finds ways to score, and he finds himself like, I don't see speed. I don't see he's a big guy, but not an overly physical guy. He just it's one of those guys that seems to do everything right, and the puck finds him.
Yeah, Jason's a lot the same way.
Yep.
It's funny, Nick Robertson, his brother last night, that was the shot you're going like, "Well, that shouldn't have gone in," and
Right.
yet, it's a lot like one of Jason's shots. It's the timing of the release, it's knowing where the goalie is, it's, just getting it on net in a manner that it's difficult for the goaltender to stop.
Yeah, Kyle Connor is a Stars killer. Maybe we put Nick Robertson in that category now.
We
Just seems like he
is
always
he's
plays well
been
against
that.
the Stars.
What's funny with Laine playing so well in Montreal, I remember those, like, he had,
Yes.
like, 2 or 3 hat tricks against the Stars back in the Winnipeg days.
Yes.
So
Yeah. I mean, that was such an interesting thing, too, because you're like, okay, if this works, wow, for Montreal. And right now it's
yeah.
clicking. So it's really, really nice. All right. New York Rangers next. Would be nice to finish off with a victory. They've been dominant at home, but, a couple losses as of late. What an interesting team, Mike, in that they're still in the playoff hunt, but, just trying to change pieces around to find that magic. But I guess it starts, in between the pipes. This is tough for the fan in me because I want Robertson to get a rest. Ottinger to get a rest. That
Right.
said, I would love to see Ottinger versus Shesterkin tomorrow night, but I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to happen.
Yeah, we were trying to read into the comments. Pete said last night after the game that he wanted to get Ottinger a rest and to get DeSmith back up and playing because he hadn't played in a while. And so then the thought process is, okay, so does that mean DeSmith is starting next game, or you wanted to get Ottinger a rest for next game? I'm very intrigued by all of this because while I don't think the coaching staff panics at all, I do think they need a win tomorrow. And so you do look at that and say, okay, well, could that be Ottinger? But then we also look at it and say, DeSmith has come in at a time when the team's kind of like wobbling, and he gives them, the game in Boston, the game here a couple weeks ago. He can be that guy where the team actually plays really well in front of him, and then you get a 2-1 game or 3-2 game, and he ends up winning it. So there's a lot of thought process going in because they have the day off, because they have flu, and because DeSmith had flu before. There's a lot to think about in how they're going to do that.
Yeah, they have some great pieces on that team, too. Everyone sees them moving and trading, and it's not necessarily they're in sell mode. They're just trying to, find that chemistry mode because, wow, you look at some of the players, you're like, I would love him, I would love him, I would love him.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and they're the exact same as the Stars. They're not scoring. Their best scorers aren't scoring, and that's a hard way to play hockey. It's such a weird game in that let's say you're having a fantastic season and you're scoring 40 goals. That means there's 42 games where you're not scoring, or even more because you probably put 2 or 3 in a lot of different games, and that's just the way it is. It's that makes a difference. And then again, the power play last night, the power play could have won them the game.
Right.
I think they had 3 early and just got nothing out of it, or the goalie was really good and made some key stops. But you need those plays. And again, you need the top players to make those plays because they get the power play time. And so you get one of those, the Rangers get one of those, and boom, a couple of these games are a lot different.
Yeah. And when you lose, it overshadows some positives because you focus on the loss. And 3 positives that I want to mention. Love what Colin Blackwell, when he's been healthy, has been able to do. Dadonov has been terrific this year, and I love his attitude as far as I'll play on the 4th line, I'll play on the 3rd line. I mean, there are only so many Swiss Army knives in this league where he can play on the top line and play on the 4th line. And then I thought Sam Steele was just unbelievable last night, and it's great to see. And he's another guy that can switch up lines. So, tough loss against a very good Maple Leafs team, but at the same time, there were some bright spots. And
they have really good depth. It's funny, we talk about the top 3 lines. That 4th line in any combination can be really good. Oscar Beck has been great. For what you expect of him. He's not scoring a ton of goals or anything, but he's out there every shift, grinding away, and they do a really good job of playing in the other team's end. And that's the best defense you can have. So you get the puck, you go, and typically you're going against some pretty good guys because the other team wants to get out against the fourth line. But if you're playing with the puck in their end, then they're not creating chances. And you have four guys, and really even five that you can alternate in if you put Mavrik Bourque down there too. And then any combination of those guys, it really ends up being a pretty good fourth line. And Pete will play him 10, 12 minutes a game. And that's also a good thing because, again, you're rotating, you're fresh, you have energy. And at times when the team has flu, then you can outshoot a team 39-19 or whatever they did.
So because of your tenure, I have my own opinion, but I have elected you don't know this, as the deciding factor on this debate. So I don't want to say a strong opinion, but I have an opinion on this. Last night, Jamie Benn played in his 1,143rd career game. That's the most ever by a player in Dallas history, surpassing Modano after relocating from Minnesota. But if you look at Modano when he was with Minnesota, I think Jamie Benn has to play approximately around 300 games, let's say, to be the all-time leader in games. So I know it's tough, and I know Dallas wants its own history, but I just feel bad for the Bobby Smiths, the Brian Bellows, the Dino Ciccarellis, the Mike Modanos, the Neil Broughtons, players like that, because I just don't feel like they have a home or in Minnesota or in Dallas. I personally don't see the problem. I would love to see more Minnesota love here, but that's been the hockey nerd in me. So you are the deciding vote, sir. Where would you like to cast your vote?
I'm 100% with you.
All right.
And I was even talking in the press box last night that it confuses people.
Yes.
Like, there are people who honestly think that Jamie Benn is the franchise leader in games played.
Yes.
And you're like, no, that's just Dallas. And I get it that they're trying to make it, but it confuses people. And you're like, if they hadn't took the history and if they didn't have the names in the rafters and they weren't the Minnesota North Stars, from as a big part of their franchise history, I get it, but they are. And so technically, as much as you want to delineate that Jamie's played more games with the Dallas Stars than anybody else, it doesn't really mean anything. And I think if you saw his face when the Jumbotron came up, he was like, yeah, whatever. And I mean, I'm not trying to be mean to the marketing people. I understand what they're trying to do. And again, exactly like you said, they want to be the Dallas Stars. They want to show what the history of Dallas is. And if you were to sit there and talk to most of the fans now, Jamie Benn means a lot more than Mike Modano did, probably. And so, they get it. I get it. But it confuses people. So if it were up to me, I would just have only the franchise records. I would not have the Dallas records, even though, it is what it is.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because, I mean, I don't know, there weren't too many, but there were some that made the transition, and therefore they need to be celebrated as well. Well, I'm glad you feel that way. That's, that for some reason that was on my mind last night. And it happens every so often where you see like most goals in Dallas Stars. I'm like, no, wait.
No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Well, and again, like I said, it confuses people.
Right.
And I do think the people who are being honored, they're like, no, I'm not. Mike Modano is the all-time leader in games played.
Yeah. Yeah, they kind of do that in Carolina with Hartford too, where they probably, if you're going to wear the Hartford Whalers sweaters, you should probably for one night change some of the numbers that are up in your rafters.
Yes.
Just out of respect. So, but we're old school hockey guys. So
indeed.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much on your day off, sir, for joining us.
Problem.
And Podman Rush, new episode. Give us a preview. What'd you guys talk about today?
It was all Daryl, whatever he wants to talk about. I always joke that I'm the Andy Richter of the show, that I just chime in every second. It was just about where they are right now and where they're going. And a lot of rambling, but good fun rambling. It, kill 45 minutes of your day. And if you're on the treadmill or driving in the car.
And later today, you'll have a preview of the Rangers. Always check out Mike's previews on DallasStars.com. And you can also check him out, Mike Heika, on Twitter. Correct, sir?
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for always coming on Spits and Suds. We love having you, and we'll catch up with you soon. Happy holidays, Mike.
Thank you very much. It's always fun.
Absolutely.
And Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you so much. That's going to do it for another edition of Spits and Suds. So glad you guys can join us, and we'll be back soon with another episode. Have a great day, everyone.